3 days after your father's funeral, your stepmother hands you a cardboard box filled with your belongings and gives you until Friday to leave the house you grew up in. This immediate aftermath of a sudden death creates a period of extreme vulnerability. We can think of it as a wealth vacuum, a moment where there is an immediate void of power, oversight, and legal clarity regarding a person's assets. And Denise moved into this vacuum immediately. She presented herself as the sole beneficiary and executed a rapid eviction, attempting to claim physical territory before the legal reality could be questioned. This type of estate theft often succeeds because it leverages speed against the emotional paralysis of grieving heirs, aiming to finalize the takeover before the family can mount a response. Most people in this position react with panic or anger, but when the box was delivered, the heir simply smiled, a reaction based on a specific strategic advantage. That advantage is information asymmetry, where one player possesses hidden data that invalidates the opponent's position. Denise assumed total control, unaware the stepchild secretly held a superseding will and audio recordings. By withholding this knowledge, the heir retains the element of surprise, turning a forced eviction into the starting point of a countermaneuver. To understand how this trap was set, we have to go back to the father's stage 4 cancer diagnosis. The household was entirely consumed by the daily crisis of medical care and hospital runs. During this time, Denise distanced herself from caregiving duties. She focused on redecorating the house and holding private meetings with a financial advisor named Gary. She assumed a young adult buried in the stress of a parent's decline lacked the focus to monitor her financial maneuvering. But while Denise planned her takeover, the heir was quietly observing these anomalies, noting the timing of her trips and visitors. Arrogance often creates a dangerous blind spot. Predators frequently mistake a victim's emotional devastation for strategic incompetence. The father recognized the risk. 4 months before he passed, he brought in a long-term, trusted lawyer to draw up a new set of final wishes. He created a superseding document. In estate law, a newly dated and properly executed will automatically invalidates previous versions, effectively removing the legal basis for Denise's claims. This new will divided the house, routed the hardware business entirely to the heir, leaving Denise a conditional stipend. But new wills are vulnerable. Hostile actors can tie up assets in probate for years by alleging mental decline or undue influence. To prevent this, the father added a final failsafe, a secret audio recording of the will's creation, capturing his own voice to provide clear evidence of his sound mind and intentions. While a legal document records intent, having a verifiable record of the testator's own words provides a layer of defense that is difficult for hostile actors to overcome in court. Back in the present, the heir stands in the hallway with the box and chooses to remain silent about the new will. There is a specific strategic necessity to this silence. Confronting Denise now would only alert her to change her approach. By saying nothing, the heir allows Denise and her advisor to officially file their fraudulent documents with the state. Once that filing is processed, the stepmother has legally committed to her narrative, creating a permanent record of her actions. Calculated silence allows an adversary to document their own fraud, moving the conflict into a space where the truth is much harder for them to hide. Once the house is asleep, the heir makes the final move, retrieving the audio recorder hidden in the father's old desk. Retrieving this recording is the anchor of the defense. It provides the time needed to uncover the advisor's paper trail and demonstrate that the attempted takeover was planned in advance. Protecting a family legacy requires anticipating the possibility of betrayal long before the crisis actually arrives. While grief can make heirs vulnerable, a hidden and verifiable record of the truth provides a specific functional defense against exploitation. Following the death of his father, a son discovers a new will, one that names his stepmother, Denise, as the sole beneficiary of the entire estate. Denise moves quickly. She begins restructuring the family business and contacts a realtor to put the house on the market, leaving the son with no inheritance and no place to live. The document raising these stakes was signed just 11 days before the father passed away. The signature at the bottom is smooth and clean, a stark contrast to the shaky handwriting the father developed in his final months. Because of the chemotherapy, the father suffered from permanent tremors that made a fluid signature like this physically impossible to produce. Despite this physical evidence, the legal burden of proof is high. It is difficult to invalidate a notarized document when the only person who can testify to its signing is no longer alive. The investigation begins with a call to Walter Kessler, the father's longtime lawyer and friend, to see if he had any record of this 11th-hour change. Walter confirms he did not draft the new document, nor was he present when it was supposedly signed. This leads the son to look into Gary, a man Denise frequently met with under the guise of financial planning. Gary isn't a financial advisor. He is a notary operating out of a shared office space who provides expedited services for cash. Every forged document requires a validator to give it legal weight. By identifying Gary, the son found the person responsible for giving the fake will its official status. To gather evidence against Gary, the son prepares to record a phone call, but first he has to ensure the recording will be admissible in court. He relies on one-party consent, a legal rule allowing a conversation to be recorded if one involved person agrees. During the call, the son poses as a customer. Gary explains in detail how he can bypass standard legal requirements for a fee. The son now had Gary on record admitting to the exact type of notary fraud used to validate the second will. The final piece of evidence wasn't a document, but a silver recorder hidden in the back of a nightstand drawer. It contained one file, recorded the same day the father allegedly signed Denise's new will. On the tape, the father and Walter Kessler are heard confirming the original estate plan. The business goes to the son, and the house is split with Denise. The recording ends with the father stating that any other claims regarding his estate would be lies, creating a direct, audible contradiction to the forged document Denise was using. With the recording and the evidence against the notary, the son has everything he needs, but he chooses not to reveal it yet. For 2 weeks, he acts defeated. He packs boxes and prepares to move out, letting Denise believe her plan has succeeded without resistance. This silence is intended to make Denise comfortable. When people believe they have already won, they often stop being cautious. Denise begins speaking openly about restructuring the company and moves forward with the sale of the father's house. By not intervening immediately, the son allowed Denise to take overt actions that further demonstrated her intent to seize the estate through the forged document. That comfort led to a final mistake on a Tuesday afternoon. During a phone call Denise didn't realize was being monitored.
Nobody's going to dig. He's 24, and he definitely doesn't have the stomach for a fight. Wow. Just imagine sitting in your own house and hearing your stepmother say those exact words about you, right as she's confidently plotting to steal your entire inheritance. It sounds totally made up like a Hollywood script, right? But this is a recorded, undeniable reality.
Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're dissecting an absolutely fascinating real-life case study that sits right at the intersection of bitter family drama, undeniable digital evidence, and the ironclad rules of estate law. I'm honestly thrilled to walk you through this timeline today, mostly because it perfectly demonstrates how easily greed can blind people to their own vulnerabilities. We're going to look at the exact anatomy of a fraud, how a seemingly powerless 24-year-old fought back, and what we can all learn from this about protecting our own legacies.
All right, Section 1, Anatomy of a Forgery. Let's set the stage and look at exactly what these fraudsters were trying to pull off here.
Okay, let's dive into this and look at the two very different plans for this estate. On the left side, we have the fraudulent plot. So Denise, the stepmother, teams up with this corrupt, under-the-table notary named Gary to create a fake will. And surprise, surprise, this forged document miraculously leaves absolutely everything to Denise. But if you look over on the right, you see the father's actual legitimate will. And here is where it gets super interesting. The father's real will was actually an audio recording in his own voice. In it, he leaves his life's work, his business, to his son. But he wasn't leaving Denise out in the cold at all. The real will provided a guaranteed lifetime stipend for her. She had a perfectly comfortable life secured, but greed just pushed her to try and take the whole shebang.
Denise's arrogance was absolutely her fatal flaw here. Look at this quote from a phone conversation she had with Gary. "Once he's out, we file the new will with the court, and it's done. Nobody's going to question it. Richard was sick, everyone knows his handwriting was bad at the end." She built her entire criminal strategy on two really dangerous assumptions. First, that her late husband's declining health and shaky handwriting would provide the perfect cover for a forged signature. And second, that her young stepson was just too broke, too inexperienced and too deep in grief to actually put up a fight. She basically assumed a dying man's silence would protect her.
Moving right along to Section 2, the secret recording. Because let me tell you, the stepson was not nearly as naive as Denise believed.
The son didn't need to go full James Bond with high-tech spy gear to build this investigation. He just used what he had laying around. Step 1, he took an old, unused smartphone and repurposed it entirely as a digital audio recorder. Step 2, he quietly hid that phone behind some books on a shelf right in the living room. Now, why the living room? Because that's where Denise comfortably took all her private calls, acting like she already owned the place. And step 3, he simply let the recorder run. And right there, from the comfort of his own living room, he captured Denise and Gary detailing their entire conspiracy over the phone.
Now, you might be wondering about the ethics of secretly recording someone in their home. The son actually admitted he felt a twinge of guilt about it at first, but then came this massive emotional turning point. The moment he listened to the tape and heard Gary, the notary, warning Denise about how his notarization records wouldn't hold up under real scrutiny, everything changed. This wasn't just a greedy stepmother anymore. This was a coordinated, multi-person crime. Hearing that plot completely dismantled any guilt the son had. He knew right then he had to fight back.
Which brings us to Section 3, the emergency legal strike. Armed with irrefutable proof, the son brings in his lawyer, Walter, and the hammer drops.
To really understand how Walter countered Denise's move, we need to understand this specific legal maneuver. So what is an emergency objection? It's a rapid legal filing submitted to the probate court. Its main job is to hit the pause button on absolutely everything. It immediately freezes all estate assets and completely halts the approval of any contested will while a formal fraud investigation takes place. It basically acts as a legal trap, stopping fraudsters dead in their tracks before they can liquidate or transfer any stolen asset. The speed of this legal strike was just wild. In the morning, the son calls his lawyer, Walter, and plays the recordings. Now get this. Walter had been a friend of the deceased father for 2 decades. So for Walter, this wasn't just another probate case. This was deeply personal. He was absolutely furious. So, that very same day, Walter drafts and files the emergency objection with the probate court. And shortly after that, a sheriff's deputy is literally knocking on Denise's door, serving her with paperwork that freezes every single asset. Before Denise could even submit her fake document, the trap snapped shut. The really crucial point here is the sheer weight of the digital evidence Walter dropped on the court's desk. It was absolutely irrefutable. First, they submitted the father's original recorded will, establishing his true intentions in his own voice. Then, they submitted the audio of Gary actively detailing how his shady notary process worked. And the final nail in the coffin? The audio of Denise literally admitting to the forgery plan out loud and laughing about the stepson being too weak to fight. I mean, you simply cannot argue against your own recorded voice in a court of law.
Moving to Section 4, the fraudster's fall. The investigation that followed took months, and the fallout was devastating.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the total, catastrophic collapse of both these individuals' lives. For Gary, the legal consequences were severe. He immediately lost his notary license and is now facing document fraud charges in at least 2 other cases. Yep, turns out Denise wasn't his only client looking for a quick forgery. Financially, his career is entirely over. And Denise? She was hit with heavy charges of fraud and elder financial exploitation. The financial fallout for her was total ruin. She lost the house and she lost that guaranteed lifetime stipend.
I actually want to pause on that specific charge Denise faced for a second because it is incredibly serious. Elder financial exploitation is defined as illegally or improperly using an elderly or vulnerable person's money or property. The courts treat this with the utmost severity, especially when someone takes advantage of a person's declining health or diminished capacity. Denise didn't just forge a piece of paper, she cruelly exploited her husband in his final, most vulnerable weeks of life.
And finally, Section 5, protecting your legacy. Let's look at how this all resolved and what we can take away from this wild story.
$0. That is the ultimate irony of this whole case. The father's original true will actually provided for Denise. She would have received a stipend for the rest of her life or until she remarried. She literally had financial security handed to her on a silver platter. But the moment she chose greed, the moment she signed her name to a lie on that forged document, she forfeited all of it. The courts do not look kindly on people who try to steal from the dying. Denise walked away with absolutely nothing. 0.
So the legal system actually prevailed here.
The father's real will, the one recorded in his own voice, was upheld by the court without any further dispute. The son successfully inherited the family business, and beautifully, he noted that he now runs it the way his father taught him, the right way, the way that prioritizes integrity over money. It's an incredible victory for the truth, proving for sure that careful documentation and decisive action will always win out over a sloppy, greedy forgery.
This quote right here might be the most powerful realization of the entire explainer. She thought a dying man's silence would protect her. She forgot he never was one to leave things unrecorded. The father had a lifelong habit of documenting things, of speaking his truth into a recorder. And even in his final days, that exact foresight is what saved his life's work. It saved his son. We're told the son actually still listens to that tape late at night, not for evidence anymore, but just to hear his father's voice, to hear exactly who he was and how much he loved him.
Which leaves us with this final thought. We spend our whole lives building our businesses, our families, and our wealth. But how much time do we actually spend actively protecting it from exploitation? The father in this story made sure his intentions were absolutely bulletproof. So I'll leave you with this question. When your time comes, what will be the recorded truth of your legacy? Make sure it's clear, make sure it's secure, and make sure it's undeniably yours. Thanks so much for joining me for this Explain